Hey everybody, welcome to episode 38 of Beyond Local. My name's Jeff Kimmel. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at LSEO. And with me today is a newcomer, new to the family, new to the podcast, Mark Rice. He is our Director of Enterprise and Growth. Just recently joined us here at LSEO, and we're happy to have you, Mark. Thanks for joining me today.
Here. Thanks, Jeff.
Great. So I thought, and you want to talk about digital health, and we'll get into that, and the status of companies' digital health, so on and so forth, which is very exciting. But before we get into that, let's kind of find out who Mark Rice is, where Mark Rice has been. Let's talk about Mark Rice.
Wow, we don't have enough time to cover all that. But I'll do my best to take you through the Cliff Notes.
Oh, great. Perfect.
First off, can't tell you, I have told you a million times, but can't tell everyone how pleased I am to be part of this team. And it really is a family. And a large part of the reason that I decided to come aboard. Love everything I see here, nothing but tremendous opportunity to help others, which is, my core philosophy in life and in business. But to give you a little bit of, my background personally, I'm a Northeastern Pennsylvania native, been here my entire life, as have been my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, etc., actually farmers. Mm-hmm. So the farming was kind of done by the time I came along. But what I inherited from them is that, farmers were the original entrepreneurs, if you think mm-hmm. about it. They were forced by the constraints of what they lived in and day out to be that businessman that had ingenuity, and their success was the mother of the skill that they developed and the way that they figured out and solved problems. Mm-hmm. And I think that's genetically come down through the lines, not only to myself, but I see it in my children who are also very entrepreneurial, very business-oriented, etc. Mm-hmm. Speaking of children, I have 6 children, 3 stepchildren, and 3 grandchildren. So family is a big part of my life, mm-hmm. And something that, I'm very proud of, and interactions with all of them are the fruit of life.
Right.
While talking about passions, I am a lifelong gigging musician. So I play guitar. I've played guitar since I was 8 years old, and I sing. And I've been in various acts over the years. Some when I had all those kids, a little less, but now that they're adults, my daughter and I actually have a duo together, mm-hmm. and we call it Rice Crew because they all play and sing. And sometimes at an event, a couple of the boys will show up and jump in and collaborate, and those kinds of experiences are some of my favorite in life. Music's always been a tremendous passion mm-hmm. of mine. So from there, professionally, I started in print. I've been in marketing and advertising for over 30 years now, but my roots are in print. And I worked for a company and learned that business. I was working in the outskirts of Philadelphia, so I had exposure to, in my mid-20s, to some very large accounts that I was entrusted with. And but I saw this opportunity early on to better serve these clients that had quickly become my friends by stepping away from that pretty darn good job for a guy that was 25, 26 years old, and starting my own business to widen the breadth of services that I could provide to these people. So with a feeling in my gut and a couple $100 in a DBA checking account, I went out on the route of becoming an entrepreneur, and quite successfully turned that business over the following 20 years into a company where my biggest clients were Disney, Warner Brothers, Activision Blizzard, Nutrisystem, and just to name a few of the names that everyone understands and knows. The niche was video games, which mm-hmm. was a growing trend in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it was physical media at the time, so you had to go to a retailer to purchase mm-hmm. the game. So my clients were EB Games and GameStop, and And what I'm proud about that, time in my life is that I never left northeastern Pennsylvania. And so what happened was, whether it was Manhattan or whether it was Santa Monica or Burbank, where some of these companies were headquartered, I was literally bringing tens of millions of dollars worth of business back into our local economy. And there was a time when we were printing and delivering point-of-purchase materials for every major retailer in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico out of Little Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Right?
That's a great story.
It's something that, it's kind of astonishing.
Right.
But you remember the craziness with Guitar Hero and when Call of Duty first hit the scene. We literally were doing the promo stuff that appeared in retail in Best Buy and Circuit City and everywhere, with the exception of Walmart. They do their own. Right here in Wilkes-Barre. So it was a really cool time.
Yeah.
But like all good things, that recession of 2000, for me, Q4 7, but 8, 9 started to end that chapter of my life.
Right. But I mean, what a chapter it was. I mean, when you think about it, just to highlight some of the things that you said, you're an entrepreneur.
Right.
So when you're in, this line of work, digital marketing,
right,
you have to put yourself in the mindset of the people you're working with.
1000%.
Who are all entrepreneurs. They're
right,
running businesses. And
right,
you have the experience of like, hey, I've done this my entire life.
Right.
I could put myself in your shoes and I can help you.
Exactly.
Right?
What the skill set that I think gets developed and honed more so than anything in that part of any entrepreneur's life is you just become this really great problem solver, because there are problems that are popping up that you couldn't have foreseen literally every day. And so like everything, experience is the mother of skill. You start getting good at finding ways. And so one of the things that I believe that I bring to the table in our engagements with customers of all sizes, but certainly the enterprise crowd, is the ability to sit on their side of the table and roll up our sleeves and have a substantive conversation that will lead to solving an issue or a problem. And problem has, people say, don't say problem because that has bad connotation. A problem is also an equation, right?
Right.
So solving a problem is solving an equation. And a lot of times, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's that little twist, left or right, that brings full focus and brings you the ability to move forward. So I agree.
Right.
It's invaluable experience that has translated forward.
And it's not only that. I mean, you just touched on it again. The second thing, I had 3 things I pulled out of it. The second thing was the fact that you worked with these large name brand, enterprise level companies. You talked about Disney, Warner Brothers, and stuff like that. So, helping businesses of all sides. And then the local aspect. You mentioned about bringing back the local, so how to bring back, revenues back into the local economy and stuff like that. So you have all 3 of those things that I heard throughout your
This area, people used to say to me all the time, certainly back then, like, why don't you move to California? Why don't you move to a bigger market where you'd have easier access to this stuff? But really, the success of my business was the great work ethic and in that instance blue collar, because it was print and print operations and packing, etc. That's what I was selling. That's what the success of my business was, that we never missed a deadline. We went the extra mile. And because, in this market, we don't have the same expenses that the higher markets do. It gave me a competitive advantage. Even though I really wasn't selling price, I was selling, something that they could count on. It certainly, leaving here never made any sense to me. It was clear to me that this was my HQ, and it's been ever since.
Okay, so I mean that covers your first chapter of your professional career life.
Yes, sir.
So I'm sure there's many more chapters. And when basically did you get into digital?
So obscurity always breeds opportunity, if you're an eternal optimist like I am. And at that juncture where my business was really failing because print had been attriting to digital quite rapidly, even when things were good. I was just in a niche that was a little more insulated than some other printers. But when that recession hit and companies really had to get very serious about looking at what they were spending on all of their marketing stuff and what their opportunities were to make investments that could really bring returns, I think that's where digital really got a shot in the arm. It had been making great traction prior, but it was overwhelmingly evident through that recession of 8, 9, 10, that digital was the way to go for all of the likely reasons. So I looked at that as an opportunity to say, okay, I've been wanting to do this. I've been too busy to do this. Let's dive in with both feet and get in this digital new frontier, right? And so I, for the first time in my adult life, went out looking for a job and got one with one of the world's largest, at the time, development and marketing companies. And I was hired by the CEO, believe it or not. Now, you and I both worked for that company. It's part of the way this story evolves and how I ended up getting here.
Right.
So you know who I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Without getting into the details, one of the interesting aspects of that, I was hired to a division that specialized in e-commerce development and e-commerce marketing. And I was competing in the negotiations for this open position of sales management for a team of about 7 really talented people against other people that had like serious experience managing teams, etc. I didn't. I was a successful entrepreneur and basically a one-man band, like a cowboy. And I went into that just kind of trying to showcase what talents and abilities I thought I had to bring to the table. And it was decided that because of that entrepreneurial experience that could be transferred through to the sales process, because I'd become kind of an expert in consultative sales, right? That I was awarded the job. But I've got to tell you, as I took it, everyone on my team knew 1,000 times more about digital marketing, web development, e-commerce development than I did. So it was really fire by trial, or trial by fire, in the fact that, and drinking through a fire hydrant to get up to speed. But it happened, quite rapidly. And what I love about the last dozen years, and that's how long it's been now that I've been in this arena, is I've had exposure to e-com. So I understand e-com thoroughly. I've had exposure to SMB, right? I've talked to mom and pops and had consultations with them along the way. It was early on, but it was along the way. So I understand local. I've had and evolved into more of the agency side of the business, and that's where I really spent the predominant amount of my time because it better aligned with my past experience. And so enterprise, standalones, and then at the end of my last professional engagement, I was, for the past couple of years, dealing with large franchise organizations and multi-location organizations, which, that's an interesting topic digitally, because I wasn't only helping them with strategies to grow their business, meaning attract more franchisees or business owners, but also helping them to make sure that each location was being successful so that their model worked, right? And prospered. Yep. And each of these things they may sound like minor iterations, but they're all similar but different. And so that culmination has really given me a solid foundation to be where I am today digitally. So what happened in Q4?
right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think that, something happened along the way. You gained a lot of good experiences. We kind of saw that, but I don't want to foreshadow too much. So continue on. What happened?
Yeah. So I've known about Kris Jones, certainly in northeastern Pennsylvania. Everyone's heard of Kris Jones, right? from Pepper Jam originally. I knew that he was part of LSEO, didn't really know how long, etc. But for whatever reasons, our paths never crossed. Now, you and I, while we didn't work directly together, we worked for the same large company.
Right.
And we worked in the same building for a period of time, and we developed, a relationship.
Right.
So honestly, looking through my LinkedIn feed like we do, right? I just happened to notice one day that you took the position of Vice President of Sales and Marketing at LSEO. And I just wanted to congratulate you about that. And I remember saying, in addition to congratulations, hey, if I can ever help you in any way, feel free to reach out. And I think it might have been 15 minutes that passed. And you mentioned that, you're expanding here, that LSEO's been experiencing some really great marked growth over the past, even time that preceded your involvement. Right. And that you were really trying to help perpetuate that forward, and that you were looking to hire someone at a director level, and wondered if I was interested in having that conversation. And so knowing that you were involved, it was immediately yes, absolutely. And then getting here and finding out that our Vice President of Operations is Steve Blackburn, and Steve also worked with us. I didn't know that prior to coming here. When I looked and saw him, I went, hey, I know you. And then getting the opportunity to meet Chris Jones, who's just, next level. There was just such an immediate synergy and rapport in those face-to-face meetings that I knew that I'd found a new home. And then what we've done since, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that everyone's been so open-minded to really think through where I can best contribute with this company. And what we've come up with in this, Director of Enterprise Growth is just it's literally writing the script for the role that I was meant to play in my professional life, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, it's like the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you mentioned it. We're growing.
Right.
We're continuing to grow. What we do is we're looking for the best talent.
Sure.
We're bringing in the best talent. Steve
Yep.
Blackburn, yourself, some of the other Kyle Cozy, when the list goes on and on.
Right.
And now we're figuring out how do we use this talent to help LSEO grow.
Right.
So we're still continuing through that. But when you came through, I thought this was interesting because, obviously we talked about a lot of your experience, and more specifically the 12 years that you've had in digital marketing with the different companies. And when we started talking right before you got hired on, you started even bringing up the fact of this digital health.
Yeah.
Companies don't know their digital health. And now I know a little bit more about what you were talking about back then, but it's been a concept that we've been working on since you've started with us. And I think it would be great for you now to share with everybody what you mean by digital health.
Absolutely. So I've had this premise for, maybe a year and a half, and it's growing, that it seems to me as we're the first level of engagement with any new prospect or first side of the client experience has everything to do with audits and us analyzing where they currently stand, sometimes to create a baseline, sometimes to create the decision as to whether there's a need, right? I keep seeing with companies of all sizes these glaring and often common areas that have issues, and it confuses me as to why a company of this size would have something so elementary, just out of whack or not being addressed. But, as I, again, continue to think it all the way through, I realize that there are a number of reasons that it's potentially happening. You can have an enterprise level company or a larger SMB that has a very talented internal team. But you and I both know, having had many consultations with these types of groups, that they're almost always stretched too thin. The internal bandwidth, they could be the most talented people in the world, but if their focus is over here, it can't be everywhere at the same time.
Right.
Okay? So that could be one reason. Another reason, which I think is far more common, is that, you know, you mentioned the word talent about some of the people here. And I think that what isn't quite as exposed as it should be is that an SEO company or a digital marketing company is not a digital marketing company, is not a digital marketing company. Thinking that is as absurd as saying that whether you want to use a sports analogy, a high school football team, a college football team, and a professional football team are of the same caliber, right? Or in my case, going back to my rock and roll roots, a garage band, you know, an indie band, or Led Zeppelin, right? There are varying levels of talents within these organizations. And that talent is going to ultimately determine the effectiveness that that organization can have when engaging, right, with a client. So I think that there are a lot of agencies out there that I've seen a lot of them, I've bid against a lot of them, and quite frankly, I've worked for one of them that just lackluster. You know, the people who are behind the scenes that are supposed to be the subject matter experts really aren't. You know, they're either not keeping up with and managing for their customers in, as you and I know, what is a rapidly always changing arena, right?
Right.
And that being one or two chicks out of step can make all the difference in, what happens. So to hedge against that, I think to myself, you know, it's so interesting how differently we conduct our affairs personally versus how we look at things in business. So in our personal lives, it makes perfect sense to us to have an annual checkup, right? In our personal lives, it's been determined that there are screenings that should happen at various times, things that are specific for all of us, things that are specific for women, et cetera. And they're based on statistics, and they're based on research, based on studies. So why, as we look at our health, our personal health, and then there are other things like symptoms, right? You go to maybe a provider because you're seeing a symptom that you want diagnosed.
Right.
That would have more to do with what you'd cover in a checkup. A screening, on the other hand, is uncovering something that there's often no symptom at all, but it's determined that that screening had value because there could be something really sinister happening behind the scenes that you don't know about.
Right.
Correct? Okay. So apply that logic to a business. And so what I see as a trend is that companies that are really doing well and attaining digital dominance, which is a term that I like to use because it is attainable, are treating their digital health very seriously. They're bringing companies in to perform annual checkups or audits, right? They are inviting screenings and being proactive about them to make sure that even if something doesn't immediately jump out, there could be something else happening behind the scenes, right?
Yep.
But they're the few, not the norm, right? They're the exception, not the rule.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say. And so I would say that 80% of the companies that I take a summary view of have some glaring area that needs to be addressed. Now, you know, so let's just use Core Web Vitals as an example, okay? And this is how objective my conversation and my information is. While we're in the web development business, we're really a digital marketing company, right? And while the two, work hand in hand, we know, right? But what I'm seeing as I analyze these companies is that 80% of companies of all sizes are headed for a real problem in May when Google enacts this new element into their algorithms.
Right.
Because their organic traffic is headed for a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is because when you analyze their website for performance metrics and user friendliness from mobile and tablet, they're scoring a D, an E, or an F, using some of the widely available tools.
Right.
This is a problem. And it astonishes me that I need to be the one that brings it to their attention. But again, fall back. They could have a great internal team, but that internal team is focused on a project that was designated a while ago, and it's all they can get to. Scenario number 2. They've got a provider that's just focusing on metrics that are way outdated. They're talking about traffic for traffic's sake instead of traffic for revenue alignment goals, as another example.
Yep.
And very few of them, I guess, are really relating the performance of the website to the digital marketing, which, again, I'm not sure how that could be in 2021, but it certainly seems to be. And so how this ties into, we're going to do, subsequent podcasts about this subject, and we'll unpack it in greater detail. Maybe we can have Kyle Cozy on to really specifically go into where the areas are of greatest concern, et cetera. But at 30,000 feet, that's what I mean by digital health. The title of this is, it's 2021. Do you really know the status of your digital health? And my premise is that I feel like many companies don't.
Right.
So
I'll just jump in there real quick. I think a lot of great points, and you think about big companies, and if they're getting the results that they see, on the surface, you know what I mean? They're getting the new clients that they need, the revenue that they need. They don't realize they could be taking that next step. They could be moving forward. And as you were speaking, and I know we give a lot of analogies and similes or whatever they are, I was thinking about like a car, right? I have a car. My car gets me from point A to point B. I'm happy. I put the windows down. Today I'm going to be putting the windows down.
Right.
It's wonderful. But every year I go to get it inspected. Right? And they tell me, you need new tires.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? If you don't get these new tires, you're going to be driving around the road, get a flat, and maybe cause an accident. Whereas I'm not looking at my tires. It's getting me from point A to point B, and I'm having a good time with the radio loud.
Such a great example. Exactly. 100% what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I think, too, digital marketing, I think, has become too familiar with a lot of companies, to your point. They're not really... They see the KPIs that once meant something to them, and they all look kind of good, but they're not really looking under the hood beyond that as to how it can be improved, right? And I think that becomes like a lot of things in our lives. When you become too comfortable with something, it becomes the nose on your face, right? It doesn't jump out that it needs attention. Back to why screenings are so important, right?
Right.
But going back to how this all ties into my role here. So, my role is part brand ambassador, right? As we said, LSEO has acquired some household name type clients, clients that are plus, $1 billion, et cetera, that are actually not only retaining our services through multiple contracts, but in some instances asking us to engage to a deeper extent.
Right.
That falls into the category of success leaves clues for me, right? That really speaks to the fact that we're bringing an consistent value and we're aligning our efforts to their revenue goals. If you can do that and you can help someone achieve that next level, they're going to be a loyal customer for a long time. I've always said in business that I'm not looking for clients. I'm looking for mutually beneficial long-term relationships. And that's what it's all about. I can help you. It's just a matter of whether you can realize that you need to be helped, right? So in addition to the brand ambassadorship, I'm out there trying to establish new relationships, right? And we have contacts with, some great C-level CEOs, CFOs, COOs, et cetera, of, companies that truly do, as you take a look, need our help, right? So I would say to any of you that when you hear from me, it's because I'm trying to help. I'm trying to bring something of value to your attention. And if all that happens in that engagement is that we get their internal team, if that's the way it is, on track, or bring something to their attention that can help them to avoid a pitfall, in my estimation, that's a win, right? And I know that that's the way Kris feels, and I know that's the way you feel, because we've all expressed it together in the same room. And if at some point there's a reason for engagement, great. That's great too. But initially, we're trying to bring value, we're trying to bring awareness, and we're trying to, just help people and companies any way we can.
Absolutely. And I think we've done that over the last couple of months. We've been on calls together where we, hey, might not be the right time to partner together, but let us help you in the meantime. You know what I mean? Show you some value.
Let's start a meaningful dialogue.
Exactly.
Right. It's worthy of their time, I assure you. This is not some preset agenda type organization. We're in this for the long haul. And again, the success leaves clues. The companies that have come on board in the past 6 months, 12 months, et cetera, that just keep getting more involved are evidence of the fact that we're not only doing a great job, but our premise from the outset was sound.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark. That was a lot. So we unpacked a lot here in episode 38 of Beyond Local. We learned a lot about Mark Rice, our director of
maybe too much.
No, never of enterprise and growth. And we learned, more importantly, about the digital health screening and how everybody should get their car inspected. They should go to their doctor's appointments to make sure their screenings are up to date, and you should get your business their digital health screening as soon as possible. So if you need help with that, of course, reach out to mark.rice@lseo.com. Just go to lseo.com and you can see all of his information. Of course, we're all over LinkedIn. There's many different ways to get a hold of us, but hopefully this was helpful for you. Before I end it, Mark, anything to close with?
No, just thank you for putting this together, and looking forward to being able to engage and help any way we can.
Great. So there you have it. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, hopefully this was helpful, and we'll see you next time on Beyond Local.